guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about our return from 1 year in Asia. These 9 things gave us reverse culture shock, and oh my goodness, it has been so different since we've been back. We were actually gone for 14 months in Asia, and we've been home in the US for about a month or so, and we have experienced a lot of things. A big one that gave us reverse culture shock was prices. And this one is more like in Asia, the price difference, everything is a lot less. And so you don't really think about things. You're just like, okay, I'll take this, I'll take this, I'll take this. You don't really add anything up in your head. You just assume when I get to the counter, it's going to be fine. No big deal. It won't be a lot of money. You get here and you grab the same amount of things, and it's going to be a lot more.
It is. And it's not just the prices. That has been a huge culture shock. We've been over that on some of our live streams, how much money we're paying in Asia. We're paying $3, $4, $5 for a meal. We get here and it's $20 a person for a meal. But it's not just that. Something you mentioned to me the other day that was very true is that it's not just the prices of things, it's the upsell of everything that you buy. So you go to the restaurant and you buy a baked potato and they'll ask you, do you want bacon with that? Do you want butter with that? And everything they ask you is 50 cents to $1 more, and they don't tell you that it is. They just try to get you to agree to things across the board that's going to cost you more money. That seems to happen now everywhere in the United States, and that's very different than everywhere else we've been in Asia. If you go somewhere and you say, oh, I want to do this, and it's more money, they're going to say, oh, that's going to be an extra $1. Are you really sure you want to do that? And you'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll do it for the extra $1. Whereas in America, it almost feels like they're trying to extract the money, trying to trick you, or just not tell you about it. And it really feels that way to us.
Yeah, it really stuck out to me, specifically in the restaurants. We did notice there's a lot of upselling, but you don't know. I happened to see it on the menu and I was like, that's an extra charge. I forget what restaurant even we were at. And they wanted to add something to the meal. They're like, oh, do you want it, with all these different things? And you said you didn't want them, and in my head I was thinking to myself, she didn't even tell you that they were going to be extra for the things that you had gotten on there. Again, these are not things, it's 50 cents, $1, $2, whatever. But in Asia, they really do their due diligence for you. They're like, that's going to be more. I want to make sure that this is going to be more. And sometimes they'll even punch the numbers into a calculator and show it to you so you can see the numbers so that you know exactly how much it's going to be. So I think that's one really huge difference.
All right, the next thing that gave us culture shock was the safety, and we were anticipating this, but it has gotten worse than we remembered. And we've been gone for so long that we just haven't really been concerned about safety, and we've been to a lot of cities now. We've been in California, we've been in Seattle, we've been in Iowa, we've been in Georgia, and pretty much across the board. It was a little bit worse on the West Coast than on the East Coast, but we have felt ourselves falling back into the habit of looking over our shoulder when we're walking around town and just saying, all right, let me make sure everything is good here because I'm passing by this corner. And that's a really big difference, because I don't think I've looked over my shoulder twice in the 14 months we were gone to Asia. I have looked over my shoulder way more just in the few weeks we've been home than in the 14 months we were gone. And that is not a great feeling.
Yeah, it's just that feeling of kind of having to be on alert at all times, which we almost never have to do when we're in Asia. And it just kind of, even we were talking about this in the car, you just kind of build up a little bit of anxiety over, am I paying attention enough to not have something get taken away from me? It's it's just one of those things. It's a huge difference again, of not have something you didn't have to think about it, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, you better really be with it and paying attention because something had happened.
All right, the third culture shock was the weather. We did go to Alaska. That was cold. And we've just been used to very warm temperatures for the last 14 months, and you do get used to that after a while. We thought we would not get used to it. You do get used to it. Even me being from Michigan, You do get used to the warm weather, and then when you come back, it does feel cold. So we had to go out and buy some jackets. That was a culture shock. Temperatures that normally would not bother us are feeling a little bit cold now.
Yeah, I remember one day on the cruise, I mean, I was bundled up. I had everything that I could pile up, and I'm sitting in this little covered thing, and I thought to myself, I wonder what the temperature is. It is so cold. I had gloves on and everything, and when I looked at the temperature, it was like 53 degrees, which I was so shocked because 53 degrees is not that cold. But for us, I think our bodies just, you get used to it. We were just used to the heat and humidity, and now 53 degrees is cold.
All right, the next one is going to be how we act towards others. And we have noticed a big difference in ourselves. It's not for the better. And it's just that you are a little bit more kind of with the safety. When you are a little more on guard, you're guarded. People will approach you in the U.S. and you're kind of like, all right, what's the situation here? Are you trying to scam me? Are you trying to steal from me? I put my hand in my pocket to make sure it's on my wallet. What is going on here? Whereas in Asia, if someone approaches you, it's generally just that they need help and there's not going to be any problem. That's generally the case too in the US, but it just feels different for you.
Yeah, and there a lot of times too, they just see that you're struggling with something when we're in Asia, or like, if it looks like you're trying to buy a ticket for a train or whatever, and they see you obviously having a problem, they'll approach you and be like, hey, let me help you with this, and they do. And you just don't even think about it. You don't think to yourself, oh, this person's going to try to scam me or take money from me or ask me for money or anything. You don't think that. But here, like you said, because you're already on guard, then that kind of complicates then your interactions with everybody, because you kind of have to think about, okay, well, what is my interaction with this person? Is this good, bad, whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because just in the month we've been here in the US, I've seen 3 thefts with my own eyes right in front of me. 3 people walk up, steal something, walk away, and that just puts you on edge. I didn't see a single theft the entire 14 months in Asia. I'm seeing them all over the place. Now, granted, that was in California, so that is probably a little bit different, but it still is a little bit shocking when you come back and you're just not used to seeing that, and now you're seeing it kind of way more than you're used to. The next shocking thing for us was how big of a difference the time zone made. I'm not talking about jet lag here, but just being in the wrong time zone. So in Asia, we are 12 hours different usually than New York time. And it means that like NFL games start at 1 in the morning, baseball games start at 7 in the morning, the stock market opens at 9:30 at night and closes at 4 a.m. So we had actually gotten used to these times, and I was like, I would wake up here and be like, why is the stock market closed? It's 6 o'clock at night. And I was like, oh, we're back in America. It's closing at its actual normal time. We can't buy anything today. We got to wait till tomorrow now. So that was a real adjustment, because you do sort of get on this schedule where you anticipate what time everything is happening at home. And now when it's actually happening 12 hours different than when we anticipated, it's happening on the real time, it can really throw you off.
It really can. The other thing that's really unusual for us is just like getting text and calls from friends and family in the daytime, which never happens to us in Asia because it's the middle of the night for everybody here. And so no one ever talks to us. We go the whole day and we only talk with, our friends who are local. And so it's interesting because you kind of get used to the schedule of, we really are only texting with people either in the morning when we wake up or, in the evening when we're going to bed, because those are the 2 times that work the best for the US schedule. But now that we're here, I'm like, why is somebody texting me in the middle of the afternoon? It's completely normal because we're in the middle of the day.
The next one is that we understand every single conversation around us. This is very taxing on your brain. You wouldn't believe it, because when you're in a restaurant or you're walking through the mall, you hear every single conversation. And you watching this, you probably hear that. You just don't realize how much you're listening to other people. But when you're in a foreign culture where you don't understand whatever's being said around you, it is kind of freeing to not have to hear all these conversations. And when we got back, and we sat down, I think the first day in a hotel restaurant, and I could not block out. It was just like, I could hear 6 conversations, and I was so invested in what they were doing. I was like, I gotta see how this one ends up, and how's this girl gonna fare? It was very, very distracting. Whereas if you're here, you probably just block that out.
Yeah, it was incredibly distracting. And for me, we started our return to the US in California. There's a lot of English and Spanish. I could understand both conversations. As you know, Spanish is my first language, and being able to understand every single conversation around me, really. And then on top of that, I could also hear people speaking, Asian languages to boot. And so you kind of pick up a word here or there. You're like, wait a minute, I'm understanding way too many things here. And it is super distracting because you don't realize how, your brain just kind of rests because it doesn't hear anything around you. I don't even know that people are having conversations around me because I can't understand them. But because you can understand them, all of a sudden you have to work overtime in order to kind of block that out of your brain.
Yeah, it was like re-engaging the brain. Whereas if you're just in America the whole time, your brain is processing all that. You just don't realize it. But when you stop processing it, you'll notice a difference. It'll be it's why when you go to the beach and you're just alone by yourself, you kind of feel free because you're not processing all the time. That kind of goes along with the next one. That is, in America, you are prone to the news 24/7. We turned on our U.S. SIM cards. All of a sudden, we started getting like text upon text upon text of, vote for this in the election. Don't miss this. I'm like, I'm not even from this state. Like 6 different states are texting us to vote in their election. You see the news is on in every hotel lobby or restaurant, and you understand it all, and you actually know what's happening. Whereas if you're walking through Japan and there might be the news on, but it's in Japanese, you have no idea what they're talking about. It doesn't even register with you, and it's one less thing you have to think about that day. You think about nothing because really, when you're out of the country, when you're in Asia, it's a little different. In Europe, you hear more U.S. news, but in Asia, you really don't hear much U.S. news in English, and so you really just don't think about it.
Yeah, it's so challenging because it's not something we were used to in the first place. The hearing news all around you 24/7, everywhere you go. Either people are talking about it and you can understand it, or they have it on, like you said, in the lobbies, in the lounges, all those different kinds of places in English. And it's not really something that you're up for filtering, And I think we just kind of handpick what we want to read about, which, news items from which places, and we just do that for ourselves so we can kind of filter those things. But here, there's no filtering because it's just 24/7 everywhere you go, it feels like.
Next one's going to be tipping, and this was totally shocking to us. If you're not familiar with Asia, the tipping culture, there is tipping, but it's pretty much just automatic. They'll put it on the bill for you, and it's just kind of like a service charge. Some countries it's 10%, some countries it's 7%, but that's just when you go to a sit-down restaurant with a waiter or waitress. Outside of that, there's really no tipping, and in Japan, there's absolutely no tipping for anything. Don't even think about it. So we got back to the U.S. and we remembered, like when we left, it was like, well, tipping was, you're going to do your 20% tip or whatever, and there was starting to be a couple places where they were asking for tips where you're kind of like, are we really tipping here? And, when you'd see that iPad at the walk-up counter, you'd be like, okay, I know they're going to ask me for a tip afterwards. But now that is like everywhere. I don't know if people don't realize it, but it's kind of like being in a hot water. You don't realize how hot it's gotten when they're making it boil. But tipping is everywhere now. Like we were at the grocery store, and it was like a 7-Eleven type place, and I'm buying a bag of chips and a Pepsi, and they're doing a tip on this? Really? Is that really happening here? It's happening. There's some crazy places that are asking for tips now.
Well, the crazy part about it is that you're the person, you were doing a self-checkout.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even with a person. This happened also at where did we go?
We went to the hotel.
Shake Shack.
Yeah.
Went to Shake Shack. Same thing. You're checking yourself out. You do the whole order, type it all into the little, screen thing, do everything, and then when you get to the end, and it automatically checks it, you have to physically uncheck it. Same thing, I ordered through an app. We ordered a sandwich through an app that we were gonna go pick up, and it automatically had the tip in there. You have to go through and actually unclick it. So it's like an extra effort to try to not do it. And it's like, this is just crazy, because it's not even, and we're not even talking about the wages that, like, for waiters and waitresses. We're talking about places, like convenience stores where you're ringing yourself up, or like, a hamburger place where you're ringing yourself up. It makes no sense. Or like if you're ordering something through an app and you're walking into the restaurant and picking it up yourself. Again, these are not tipping situations in my head, or from my understanding, but there's so many things. Or like, here's the really crazy one because of the ordering apps. This is a different one. So like if I order Instacart here in the US, not only am I paying extra, I pay extra if I want my order, like the first one to be delivered. Pay extra for that, and then on top of that, then I go ahead and they do their service charge, and they do all different, there's like 4 or 5 different types of fees, and then they ask you before you finally check out, they say to you, if there's a better chance of your order coming quicker if you do an advance tip. And I was like, what? So they want you to put another tip on there in order to increase your chances of getting your order quicker. Well, the fact of the matter is that I've already paid the service fee, the delivery fee, the packaging fee, paid extra for bags and all that kind of stuff, and then they still want another tip in advance to add on there in order to deliver to you, where that's not the case at all. When we do orders, I order groceries a lot in Asia, and it's not like that at all.
No, and like, so we were in Manila, the Philippines, in a restaurant. It was like a Chili's, TGI Fridays type of place like that. And we're sitting there, we're eating, and waitress was really good, and I wanted to give her a tip afterwards, and so I wasn't really sure how they were going to handle that, and so I just gave her my card. She took it back, ran it. I figured I'd just put the tip on the receipt like we do at home. Well, she brought it back to me, and there was no line for a tip, and I was like, oh, I wanted to give you a tip. Is there nowhere to write it? She was like, oh no, I already ran it. You can't do it now, so don't worry about it. We don't worry about that. And I was just like, she just told me not to give her a tip. So like, being American, I just handed her some cash, because like, I can't, like, we're unable to walk away without tipping, even when it's not a tipping situation. So if you're American and you're like traveling the world, you are going to be way over tipping just by doing your average, because other countries just do not even consider tipping at the same level we do. So it's a whole another topic. Let us know if you think in the comments that the tipping has gotten out of control. Just being away and then coming back, it's really elevated to us how crazy it is. But the next one's going to be driving, and driving really took us by surprise.
It really did, because the fact is that you have to drive almost everywhere, and it is so challenging. We have a rental car, which is fine, but our hope was to continue to, walk or take public transportation. Unfortunately, usually things are not close enough that you can walk to, unless you're in the bigger cities, right in the city, then you can. But again, you have safety issues to concern yourself with. And then the other thing is, again, some of those big cities do have transportation, like metros and buses and things like that. But again, it's a huge safety issue, and in some places we just flat out quit doing it because it was such a huge safety issue. And it just is, it's really frustrating, because you have to get in the car for everything. You're not outside getting fresh air, you're not outside getting movement. It's really it really is such a huge difference from the way we live our life when we're in Asia.
Yeah, so it has been a very eye-opening experience being gone for that long and then coming back. It's been way different than we thought it would be. We do love America. We love being back. We love being home. It has just changed a lot more. Or maybe we've changed more being gone in Asia. I think both things have changed. And I think together that has made it seem very different for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully this was enlightening for you or helpful for you to think about as you start to travel around the world, or maybe you've had these experiences also, or other culture shock experiences, reverse culture shock coming back to the US. Let us know down in the comments, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.